The biting cold of high altitude was a cruel, constant companion. It seeped through thick flight suits, numbing fingers and toes, a constant, insidious chill that bespoke the vast emptiness surrounding the B-17 flying fortress known as the Rikki Tikki Tavi. In the confined, solitary world of the tail gunner's position, a young man named Gene Moran gripped the handles of his twin .50 caliber machine guns, his breath fogging the small, bulletproof windows. The date was November 29, 1943, and the roar of 4 powerful engines was the only sound in his universe as he braced himself for the intense conflict over Bremen. Thousands of feet below, Germany lay cloaked in a fragile winter light, a seemingly peaceful landscape soon to be rent by the fury of war. The Rikki Tikki Tavi was part of a colossal armada, over 300 heavy bombers, a silver-winged spearhead aimed at the industrial heart of the Third Reich. These were the men of the 8th Air Force, embarking on another daylight precision bombing raid, an endeavor born of strategic necessity and incredible risk. Each mission was a gamble against overwhelming odds, a desperate struggle for air superiority over enemy territory. The aerial bombing campaigns of World War II were exercises in unimaginable scale and consequence. From the safety of the ground, the B-17 earned its moniker, the Flying Fortress, a symbol of American industrial might and aerial supremacy. Yet for the young men crammed into its metal shell, miles above the earth, it was a vulnerable beast of aluminum and fabric, perpetually threatened by enemy fighters and deadly anti-aircraft fire. The tail gunner, perched at the very rear, was both the last line of defense and often the first to face the full, terrifying brunt of an enemy attack, a testament to individual courage in a collective struggle. The crew of the Rikki Tikki Tavi had known the nervous anticipation that preceded every mission, the ritual of pre-flight checks, the exchange of forced jokes, and the quiet prayers. They had envisioned the orderly patterns of formation flying, the precision of their bomb run, and the triumphant, if battered, return to base. But the reality of combat over enemy skies was a chaotic maelstrom of screaming engines, flashing gunfire, and the terrifying concussions of exploding flak. It was a reality that tested men and machines with brutal indifference, leaving behind only the cold statistics of the fallen. Their target, Bremen, was a bastion of German industry, protected by a dense network of anti-aircraft batteries and swarms of Luftwaffe fighters, a true fortress in its own right. The journey there was a gauntlet, each mile deeper into enemy airspace, increasing the tension, the unspoken question hanging in the frigid air: would they make it back this time? Every crew member, from the pilot in the nose to the isolated gunner in the tail, understood the stakes. They were part of a grand strategic design, but in the immediate moment, their world shrank to the confines of their vibrating aircraft, their survival resting on steel, courage, and a heavy dose of luck. As the formation pressed deeper, the skies remained deceptively calm, a vast azure canvas awaiting the paint strokes of war. Then the silence shattered, a distant crackle over the intercom, a shouted warning slicing through the engine noise. "Bandits! 12 o'clock high!" German Bf-110 heavy fighters, armed with a new, terrifying weapon, the 21-centimeter Werfer granite mortar rockets, tore into the formation. These rockets, launched from under their wings, were designed to break up the tight bomber box, a precursor to the close-range engagements that would follow. The air around the Rikki Tikki Tavi erupted into a maelstrom of smoke and streaking projectiles. Tracer rounds like fiery needles stitched through the sky, some dangerously close, others finding their mark on other fortresses. Gene Moran, in his isolated perch, watched the distant flashes, the grotesque bloom of explosions, and the heartbreaking sight of a fellow bomber, crippled and smoking, falling out of formation. He scanned the horizon, his gloved hands ready, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. Every fiber of his being was focused on the hunt, seeking the deadly shapes that would emerge from the chaos. The roar of powerful engines and the rhythmic thud of Gene's own .50 caliber machine guns joined the symphony of destruction. His tracers, bright arcs of phosphorus, streamed towards the retreating German fighters, a desperate prayer in metal. The sky was thick with the smoke trails of aircraft, both friendly and foe. Then a new wave, more numerous and aggressive, descended upon the reeling formation. Nimble Bf-10-9s and the deadly FW-190 Butcher birds, their speed a blur against the gray-white clouds. The air filled with the chilling staccato of machine gun fire, punctuated by the dull thuds of impacts on the bomber's fuselage. The B-17 was a magnificent machine, designed to absorb punishment, but even its legendary toughness had limits. The metallic symphony of battle was now joined by the ominous chorus of anti-aircraft fire, the dreaded Flak. Black puffs of smoke blossomed across the sky, each one a lethal burst of shrapnel designed to tear planes apart. The Rikki Tikki Tavi shuddered, tossed like a toy in the violent eddies of the explosions. Gene could see the ragged holes appearing in wings and fuselage of his own plane and others, stark reminders of their vulnerability. Through the chaos, the mission pressed on. The lead plane finally released its bombs, and with a collective sigh of relief, the Rikki Tikki Tavi followed suit, the sudden lightness of the aircraft a welcome relief. Bomb bay doors slowly ground shut, sealing them off from the abyss below, and the pilot banked towards home. For a fleeting moment, a sense of relief washed over the crew. They had survived the target, the flak was receding, and the German fighters seemed to have broken off. A partial damage report came over the intercom. Wings and fuselage, some holes. Engines, good. We're gonna make it. But the respite was cruelly short-lived. Just as hope began to bloom, the ominous call came again. Bandits! They're back! A fresh swarm of enemy fighters like vengeful hornets descended upon the limping formation. They were not merely seeking to drive the bombers away. They were determined to exact a toll, to challenge the Americans for their raid on Bremen. Gene's world once more dissolved into a desperate ballet of tracers and evasive maneuvers, his gun barrels hot, his mind numb with the single-minded focus of survival. The formation, already battered, began to unravel under the renewed assault. Bombers struggled to maintain their tight boxes, essential for mutual defense. The Rikki Tikki Tavi, perhaps already damaged in ways the crew hadn't yet discovered, started to fall behind, slowly drifting away from the protective embrace of its sister ships. The gap widened, inexorably, dangerously. In the isolated tail, Gene Moran felt a growing unease, a cold premonition gripping him. Being alone in the vast, hostile sky was a perilous situation, a stark reality no gunner ever wanted to face. The silence from the cockpit was chilling. No reassuring words, no commands, just the relentless roar of engines and the continued onslaught of enemy fire. Gene shouted into his intercom, demanding answers but received none. The Rikki Tikki Tavi was now an isolated target, a lone, crippled prey. German fighters, sensing the vulnerability, converged, their guns delivering deadly fire. The sound of bullets impacting the fuselage was relentless, a terrifying drumbeat of destruction. Then came the scream, raw and primal, over the intercom. It was from Wilbert Pee Wee Provost, the ball turret gunner, Gene's best friend. A Messerschmitt fighter was directly below, tearing into the bomber's belly. There was the shattering sound of plexiglass, a choked cry, and then silence. Gene knew, with a sickening certainty, that Pee Wee was gone. Rage and grief surged through him, fueling his desperate fight. He swung his guns, tracing the departing Messerschmitt, sending a barrage of lead that finally found its mark. The enemy fighter smoked, faltered, and plunged earthward. Another German fighter, a Bf-109, appeared alongside, its pilot a grim silhouette. He was just out of Gene's firing arc, a menacing presence. Gene locked eyes with the German, a strange, silent confrontation amidst the chaos. The German pilot made a gesture, a pointing finger towards Gene, then a downward motion towards the earth. Was it an offer? A chance to bail out? To abandon the doomed aircraft? Gene stared back, bewildered. A terrible question hanging in the air. Was he the last one left? Had the others bailed? Or were they dead? The silent truce was shattered by a sudden burst of gunfire from somewhere else in the Rikki Tikki Tavi. Someone was still alive, still fighting. Whatever decision Gene might have made was now nullified. The Bf-109 pilot, his offer refused or ignored, peeled away, leaving the fortress to its fate. The German planes returned, a vengeance-fueled swarm, for the killing blow. The tail section of the Rikki Tikki Tavi became a crucible of tearing metal, screaming wind, and exploding shrapnel. Gene was thrown violently, his body slammed against the cold metal, a blinding agony searing through him. He fought his way back to his guns only to find them jammed, silenced. Despair threatened to engulf him, but a primal instinct for survival propelled him forward. He worked frantically, his injured fingers fumbling with the mechanisms. Then, a miracle. One gun roared to life, spitting defiance. But it was too late. More bullets ripped into the plane and into Gene, a searing pain tearing through him, and his world dissolved into darkness and the cold, vast emptiness of the sky. The Rikki Tikki Tavi shuddered, groaning like a dying beast, and began its final terrifying descent. Gene, battered and broken, felt himself pinned against his seat by the incredible forces of the plummeting plane. A gut-wrenching shriek of tortured metal filled his ears, growing louder, more desperate. He felt the floor beneath him shift, pulling away. He grabbed instinctively at anything solid, his vision blurring with agony and desperation. He watched in horror as the main fuselage, the bulk of his aircraft, tore itself away, plummeting below him, a ghostly shape swallowed by the clouds. Gene was left clinging to the floor of the tail section, now a detached, spinning tomb screaming into his mask. He was hurtling towards the earth, inside a piece of debris, a mere fragment of what was once a mighty flying fortress. The world spun wildly, the dizzying centrifugal force pressing him into the shredded metal, unable to move, unable to escape. The fall seemed endless, a torturous eternity of spiraling descent. The cold wind howled around the shattered plexiglass, a mournful dirge. The tail section, with Gene still trapped inside, finally slammed into the earth with a violence that should have obliterated any life within. But somehow, impossibly, Gene Moran survived. He lay amidst the wreckage, a broken, barely conscious testament to the human spirit's refusal to yield. Through the fog of pain and shock, he saw a glimmer of light, a promise of escape. He crawled, inch by agonizing inch, towards it, his body screaming in protest, his broken arms dragging uselessly. He tasted blood, felt the chilling looseness of his teeth. Finally, he fell out, onto the soft, snow-dusted ground of a forest. The mangled tail section, his unlikely sanctuary, hung above him in the trees like a macabre trophy. He was alive. His relief was profound, but short-lived. The silence of the forest was soon broken by distant voices. Expecting the worst, Gene was heartened by Thule. System, sound of French. Local workers, accompanied by German soldiers, found him, a miracle of survival amidst the devastation. He was roughly transported to a POW camp, where a compassionate Serbian doctor, with incredible skill, provided life-saving medical care, tending to his severe head injuries. The journey of survival, however, was not yet over. Gene's injuries were not just physical. The horrors of that day, the screams, the chaos, the unimaginable freefall haunted him. Nightmares of falling, of screaming into the void, became a recurring torment in his recovery. Yet, against all odds, he recovered, slowly mending both body and spirit. After the war, he was repatriated, finding solace and shared understanding with Jesse Orison, the navigator, the only other survivor from the Rikki Tikki Tavi. Their shared experience forged an unbreakable bond, a silent testament to the extraordinary ordeal they had faced. The image of a lone, flickering tracer round, arcing through the darkness, encapsulates the essence of this harrowing tale. It represents the fleeting moments of impact, the desperate struggle for survival, and the thin line between life and death. In the vast, impersonal canvas of war, each tracer marked a desperate plea, a fleeting hope, a stark warning. For Gene Moran, those fiery trails illuminated a path through an impossible nightmare, a testament to the sheer will to live, even as the world tore itself apart around him. The story of Gene Moran, the tail gunner who fell with his section of a B-17 and lived, stands as a powerful testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable horror. It reminds us that even amidst the impersonal statistics and strategic narratives of war, there are individual stories of courage, survival, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. These are the narratives that define us, that echo through the ages, and that we continue to unearth here on Stories from the Battlefield. They are the stories of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, facing the ultimate test and finding within themselves the will to defy fate.